Is it going? Hey everybody, just figured I'd send a quick check.
This is Paul Ferguson. Tragically, his brother Timothy passed away just prior to this live stream.
For those of you who aren't aware, my little brother has passed away, and it's a lot to deal with, but we're fine.
With such devastating news, viewers quickly showed him support during this terrible time. But unbeknownst to Paul's fans, this would be his last live stream ever. Because as it turns out, Paul himself was behind the death of his younger brother.
911, what's your emergency?
I will come to the patient. Gotta work. Yeah, and my son's not breathing.
On the 6th of July, 2022 at 6:37 p.m., police were called to assist with a medical emergency just outside of Grand Rapids in Michigan. The caller, Shonda Vander Ark, mother of Paul and Timothy, had told paramedics that Timothy wasn't breathing. Just 7 minutes after arriving on the scene, Timothy was pronounced dead. Officers had never seen anything like it. Timothy was malnourished, bruised, and hypothermic. There were bones protruding from his skin, and despite being 5'8", he weighed just 69 pounds. Most concerning was where they actually found Timothy. He was lying in a small closet that reeked of urine and feces. Inside was a blue tarp and an Amazon box, and just outside were a pair of ankle shackles. There were also multiple cameras around the room and an alarm on the door he was found in. Undoubtedly, something was incredibly wrong, but police hadn't even scratched the surface of just how horrible this case would turn out to be. So, to maybe shed a little light on what just happened here, Officer Sean Stefanich decides to talk to his seemingly grieving mother, Shonda.
Hello, ma'am. I'm Officer Stefanich. Right now we got some people coming over to talk to you, okay?
He's been wearing really loose clothes the last couple of weeks.
He's really skinny.
He's really skinny, and I didn't notice till this morning because he wouldn't, I asked him if he's okay, and he would not answer me. He's 15, he's been...
He has autism?
Yeah.
Like a high functioning?
Yeah. I had no clue how bad it was. Oh my God. He did this back in... my husband's stroke was January 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
So he did this back in, I don't know, second week of January for almost 3 weeks. And then he ate something last night. I can't remember what it was now, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
This is where police realized that Shonda's emotions might all be an act. And as they would uncover more evidence in the house and talk to her son Paul, these claims would slowly fall apart. So as the officer listens to her side of the story, he'll be looking for anything to latch onto that they can use against them later to determine the truth.
I get it. I had no idea. I would have taken him in or something.
Now, you said the last time you saw him was 5:30 this morning?
Yeah.
Did he say anything?
He had fallen out of bed.
At 5:30?
Yeah.
You sure it wasn't earlier?
I mean, it's possible. I thought it was 5:30, but I wasn't super awake. I heard a thump, and I came down, and he's kind of laying on his side, kind of like, what the heck? And I reached out. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry. Oh my God.
Timothy was pronounced dead at 6:44 a.m. that morning, just an hour after Shonda claimed she last talked to him. The reason the officer seemed suspicious is because the first responders noticed that rigor mortis had already started setting in, tightening his facial muscles. This usually starts anywhere from 2 to 4 hours after death, not the barely 1 hour that Shonda is claiming here. But the real question is how Shonda never noticed just how skinny and emaciated Timothy really was. This sort of malnourishment doesn't just happen overnight, so the officer asks her to explain herself.
I asked him to eat last night because his face started looking a little thin. I'm like, okay, enough. And he wouldn't show. I'm like, let me see. Hold your shirt up. And he wouldn't hold his shirt up. He wouldn't do anything.
Did he get real skinny last time too?
Yes. The only reason I know is because my 7-year-old walked in on him accidentally when he was in the shower downstairs. And then my 7-year-old comes up and he's like, Mama, Timothy's really skinny. I was like, oh.
Was that this time or last time?
That was last time. And I told him he was either going to start eating multiple times a day, or I was taking him to the hospital, and he didn't want to go to the hospital, so he
ended up eating on his own.
Yes.
And then, so this last time, was it because your husband wasn't home?
Well, he hasn't been home since January 3rd. He actually mentioned he was hungry the day his dad and stepmom called to tell us they were divorced and moving to Florida last week.
Shonda is essentially saying that Timothy wasn't eating because of a, quote, hunger strike, campaigning against family problems. Back in January, Adam Vander Ark, Shonda's husband, had a stroke and had to move out due to issues accessing their home. Apparently, this caused Timothy to stop eating for 3 weeks, and he only started again after threats of being taken to the hospital. But for the last 2 weeks, he'd stopped eating again, allegedly this time due to his biological father divorcing his wife and moving away to Florida. Each of these events did indeed happen, but as it would turn out, they had nothing to do with Timothy's hunger at all.
I tried to check it in the last few days, and he just wouldn't let me anywhere near him. He didn't want a kiss, a hug, nothing.
What was the last time he ate, you think?
Last night, he ate. Oh my God. I should have made him eat. I feel like such a failure. You see there's food in the house. I should have done something. Can they really hide that from you like that?
It would turn out Timothy wasn't hiding anything from her, but police had to get to the bottom of what exactly she knew. So after this initial questioning phase ended, police handed over the case to detectives, who obtained a search warrant and began to collect evidence throughout the house. That's when they found leg shackles in a drawer, 4 webcams scattered strategically placed around a basement, zip ties in the bathroom, a half-empty bottle of Extreme Regret Carolina Reaper hot sauce, and locks on every single fridge, freezer, and pantry in the house. This painted a picture of a helpless boy forced to live inhumanely among his own dirt and filth, watched every second of the day, and brutally tortured until the very end. The next day, an autopsy was conducted on Timothy's body, finding even more strange and worrying things. He had extremely sunken eyes, slightly blue-tinted skin, and there were many signs of dehydration as well. His cause of death was determined to be dehydration and extreme emaciation due to starvation, with hypothermia playing a role too. With all of this information and evidence gathered, the police knew something foul had to be at play. They just weren't sure what. Starvation in a house filled with food, hypothermia in the middle of an American summer, alongside hot sauce and handcuffs. It had to all come together somehow. So the day after Timothy's death at 3:57 p.m., they bring in Paul, Shonda's 20-year-old son, for interrogation to try and uncover what all this could possibly mean and how exactly he was involved. What Paul doesn't know is that they've already collected a mountain of evidence. Detective Ryan Peask is going to use a 5-step program to slowly extract the truth from Paul, starting by getting on his good side and ending by tearing into him and making him feel so guilty he'll have no choice but to confess to everything.
I don't want to talk anything specific about the case just yet. Since the police showed up at your house and they brought you down here, I want to advise you some rights before we talk about that sort of thing. What I do want you to know, though, is that we went to your phones, okay? There's a lot of evidence in the phones, and I know that you're kind of aware of the communication between yourself and your mother. Yes. And those sort of things. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you about. Yeah. But, I mean, certainly those are very serious things that you guys are talking about.
As mentioned, police have spent the last 24 hours combing over text messages, camera recordings, crime scene images, and much more to try and get a good picture of what had happened. So, as the case is with many younger suspects, Detective Peask will start calmly, trying to put Paul at ease and get on his good side, before slowly breaking him down and exposing the truth.
I know that we talked yesterday, and I know that not everything that we talked about was the truth yesterday. That's okay. You don't have to feel bad. You don't have to feel guilty about not telling the truth to me. I'm not trying to get to the truth of what really happened with your brother, because he deserves that. I mean, there's clearly a lot of messages about stuff that you guys are doing with him, about what he's eating, about restricting his food. How did that all work?
We stopped the food restrictions recently because we had noticed his end. We wanted to get that back on. We didn't want any of this. We never wanted him to be injured or hurt. I loved him so much.
Yeah, I can tell that. I can certainly tell that.
And we wanted what's best.
Yeah.
The thing is, he was stuck in the past.
So you stopped the food restriction. When did that kind of happen?
2 weeks Approximately, we were hoping that we could get enough where it would be safe and then we could continue to add it back to where we wouldn't have to worry and we could...
What were the restrictions?
We made sure that it was still something that gave him enough calories and everything. It was rice or bread, and like I said last week, he got pizza.
Throughout the thousands of texts detectives have between Paul and Shonda, there's a huge amount of talk about food restrictions. It doesn't take much to realize that this was why Timothy was as thin as he was. Peace will focus more on this later. What's more interesting, though, is how Paul justified this.
We loved him. We wanted what's best. We made sure that it was still something that gave him enough calories and everything.
These aren't Paul's own thoughts. This is just what he's been told by his mother since the started. Over the course of several months, he's internalized it, and now seems to fully believe that what he's been doing to Timothy is for his own good.
What were they for, like, in the first place?
Sneaking food over and over and over. We tried everything. We were nice. We tried different consequences, but I couldn't never listen.
What were some of the other types of consequences?
We did take away his devices. That was also because he wouldn't stay on the school sites and would just go and try and play games or watch YouTube. He should have been held back so much.
Yeah.
But he passed all of his final exams. And so I don't think it was my stepmother. My stepmother was amazing.
Yeah.
But I believe it was my father's too.
Okay.
But my dad's controllish, freaky nature was just, he didn't want her having any contact and screwing all of his control up.
Okay.
Note how the only consequence that Paul mentions here is the fact that they take away his phone occasionally, something fairly innocuous. It's also worth mentioning just how quickly he tries to put Timothy and his father down in exactly the same way his mother was known to do. But as Paul continues talking, it becomes clear exactly how much of a problem this has actually become, and that he might have actually been strongly manipulated by her to do all of this.
There was a thing back in Oklahoma where I had problems with emotional release. I was so terrified of him that I didn't ever want to release any of the negative emotions I ever had around him. There were times where I wanted to say no, but I was so terrified that I just couldn't. Here, I can release my anger, and I do it in the right ways. I never do it in any way that I'm not supposed to. She had her tubes undone for Gabriel. He was a blessing to this world.
Yeah. You mocked him with that? Certainly. That he's a blessing.
Of course. She loves him so much.
Before having her third son, Gabriel, Shonda had a procedure to restore her fertility. To her, having Gabriel was a miracle because she didn't know if this would work. That's likely why no evidence was ever found of her harming Gabriel, because he was by far and away her favorite child. That does, however, provide a harrowing reason for why she might have abused Timothy so much. He was her problem child, and she didn't like the fact he had so many mental health conditions, so she wanted to take her anger out on and deal with the problem directly.
Will there be any sort of consequence for your mom if you slipped up with her attitude, or how would that work?
There were times when I would cop an attitude that was unnecessary, and she would have me get off devices for maybe 15 minutes, because usually that was what it was revolved around, because I'll be honest, I have an addiction to my devices.
Okay.
I never had not very much of that back in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
My dad was strict. He didn't even give me a phone. My sister and my stepsister had phones before I did.
So now you're in work. And then we talked yesterday about how you're paying bills.
Yeah, and like my father, she doesn't force me to give her half of my paycheck. He forced that on me. And I was working basically minimum wage at both.
Yeah, that's tough.
And the thing is that my mother can't even face my father right now. She doesn't want to call him because the one thing that she and I both know is that he's going to hurl every ounce of blame that he can at her.
Listen to how he's talking about his father. He's only able to say negative things about him and brings these points up even while unprompted. He clearly has a strong dislike of his father and talks about him like a divorced partner. Take a guess where that stemmed from. It's clear his mother has been feeding him lies and negativity about his father, and there's no clearer example of this than what he says next.
I moved here into Michigan, I think, on the 30th.
Okay.
Because for the time after I had moved out of my parents' house, I stayed